Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. It is late night with the Borg and Brendan. Assimilate to the Borg. We are back and better than ever. As always, quite the day today in the SCS landscape. Again, Alex, read between the lines. But beyond that, you didn't need to see that, Borg. Beyond that, our title sponsor is Kubota Dealers of South Dakota. With 10 locations across this great state, you can get into orange equipment anywhere you are, and it's just down the road from you. Kubota Dealers South Dakota, they have parts, service, and more, though I don't think you'll be using the parts or service very much. They are some reliable pieces of equipment. And of course, our show sponsor is Cubby Sports Bar and Grill of Brookings, South Dakota, in downtown Brookings, the #1 sports bar in the state. I ended up going to a sports bar in town because it's a long way to drive with the baby for a late night game, and it was not nearly the experience that it is at Cubby's. So go to Cubby Sports Bar and Grill in Brookings. They are the place to watch the Jacks when they're on the road, at home, or anywhere, and the best place to get food. You will get the best service and food available, I promise you. Well, Borg, we had quite the week, but I think the star of the show who jumped on is Kirby Voorhees. And I am throwing this up from Ryan Jensen at Evolution Prime on Twitter because this is a fantastic, very quickly done, I'm sure, AI, but I couldn't have done it better myself. I think he needs to get tagged in it. But what a game. My God, what a way to burst on the scene.
Out of nowhere, too. I mean, he hadn't really you look up I've got the stat line here with me. Before this, and obviously Angel this was the second game Angel missed. I think they say it was a hamstring with him, I think, on the radio, I think was what I'd heard.
Yeah. Yep.
But so obviously a little concern there, but I was looking at where's this rushing stats?
Well, Ben last week brought up
previous
find a short yardage back, and
I brought that up. I was thinking about that in the preseason. I'm like, it's like, they need to change. Like an Angel and Amar. Angel had gotten bigger, but he's still kind of the same, similar back to what Amara was, and Amara's running more physical this year. But yes. Kirby's numbers this year in his 3 previous games at OSU, 2 carries, 7 yards. Incarnate Word, 5 carries, 27 yards. Augustana, 5 carries, 21 yards. And then tonight, he's in that 5 carry ballpark. So 5 carries, 179 yards. Oh, he just went from, averaging about, about 4 or 5 yards a pop isn't bad. And then you go to 35 yards. That's a bit of a jump. So, you're shedding guys left and right and having people hanging off you. It's a nice little jump.
He brought it, and you are welcome to call him Kirby Truckin' Voorhees if you want. That's what we've tabbed him, and by we, I mean Chad Myros. Producer Chad tabbed him as Kirby Truckin' Voorhees, but great name, I think, for him because they just fell off him. It was Kevin from FCS Nation Radio said, "Is he Mike Allstott?" And God, you watch the highlights from ground level, it kind of looks like it. That was wild.
Better get this online here because we just finished our shows here, and I did thankfully SDSU sent their it's full credit to SDSU. There's a little courtesy in the bar, but use the SDSU highlights they posted. They do send out video. Sometimes we could not get an affiliate in Louisiana to shoot it for us. Obviously, they were a little busy with LSU in town, and apparently, and actually the other FCS team, Southern, even though they don't play in the playoffs, is a pretty big deal down there too, the Southern Jaguars. So kind of had some hope this week that somebody was going to be able to shoot that, but that kind of fell through. So luckily SDSU was able to post some of their highlights up, so I'm tweeting out those links because we've got the Jacks game highlights, tweeting those out right now. So those will be posted here in just a second, so you guys can watch a little bit of that if you haven't already watched a little bit on the SCSU feeds, because they're pretty impressive at ground level, needless to say. But very impressive. And if he doesn't have those touchdown runs, this maybe would have gotten a little hairier, dare I say, because they were, it's one of the. I don't know if it was similar to Augustana a week ago where the defense was just playing so well that it didn't feel like they were well, and it was also a field position thing too, because they kind of kept pinning him backward. But the offense just wasn't doing anything. And it was like, you're kind of letting them. I think the difference between this and Augustana was, okay, this is two differences. This is a Division I team that you figure, okay, maybe they're a little bit, they got a little more scholarships, and it's on the road. So you really hate letting a team like that hang around, especially when you're in their place. Little surprised too, I guess there wasn't more of a crowd for that. I don't know. I thought there would be a little bit more to that, but it didn't look like that. There were a lot of SCSU people there, which is not a surprise. But I think the last, I pulled some video for one of our previews from that affiliate that did go to a previous game a year ago, and there was a decent looking crowd when Houston Christian was there a year ago about this time. I'm like, you'd think the number one. I mean, again, obviously, was I know I'm not kidding myself that Southeast Louisiana is probably not a great draw, especially when LSU was in town at 2:30. And like I said, Southern is a big brand for the HBCUs down there. So, and it's about 45 minutes from Baton Rouge. So I just thought it would have had a bigger crowd. But yeah, it was we're going to have that conversation here in a minute. And I'm kind of alluding to that, Zach, because I mean, if Voorhees doesn't have those runs, I mean, maybe we kind of saw their identity shift a little bit right now into what they are going to have to be until they figure out what's going on here, because they definitely became more of a running team in that second half. I mean, there's no question that it just was not working with the pass game. It wasn't all Mark. There were some drops. I don't see
a bunch of drops. I'm
trying to see what it's always kind of a weird. I'm trying to see. I don't think they actually. Yeah, the SCSU stat line does not actually log the drops on some. It's kind of a funky. Some scoring things are a little different how they log it. I mean, I think in the pros they do log it. I don't know if they do in college. But yeah, I think so. And I think the one interception he threw, he was getting pressured, and he got hit as he threw. So I don't know if that was a bad decision or if he just got, a little bit of both. But yeah, I mean, there's definitely there's definitely some. It's weird that, and I would say this for USD when we go there. I'm like, they both scored 40, but I still don't entirely feel super confident about either offense as they go into Valley play. Obviously, SDSU has a bye week to figure some more stuff out. But yeah, there's some. We'll get into that because I think there is some. Got to be a little concerned at least right now with some of that.
Yeah, I think there's definitely concern. I mean, 8 of 19 for 4 yards per pass. That's just it's not good. I do think looking at that yards per pass, some of that, yes, is Mark, but I think a lot of it, I don't know what this play calling is, to be honest. It is we tried one deep route. We ran one other seam route that we hit for the touchdown that John Colley is bringing up. They had a nice TD pass that was called back. They ran that type of play twice. That's it. They never pressured down the field. I don't understand it. I don't know if they are not. I'm not understanding. All these pass routes are short, and this was a complaint from UND fans about Freund. And at this point, it's starting to become a concern for me as well. And I'm not taking anything off of Mark. That's not a good game. It's just not. I mean, there's no way to color it as anything but. And he seems to still have a little bit of trouble, trusting his line. But then, on top of it, ball's going through guys' hands. Nobody can reach up and catch a football. That's not happening on a slant route. It just whizzes right through their hands every time. And maybe it's too much heat on them, but he's throwing them with heat because there's a guy on their back. You don't see anybody running free like it used to be, which granted, Mark needs to be the quarterback who throws those guys open for sure. But if it's never happening. It's not like the Jacks haven't brought in talented players at wide receiver. Like, we're not calling plays that get them open, and we're just calling these bubble screens. We're calling a run play on 3rd and 11 when you've got the reigning Walter Payton Award winner at quarterback. Even if he's having a bad game, Jesus, we should have an 11-yard play. I'm not saying there's a lot of them. I know offensive coordinators will tell you we don't have a 3rd and 25 play, but we should have a 3rd and 10 play. And I'm just not seeing it. And it's concerning. And I don't know what they have to do. They're shutting Wildy down. You know, Zach says he said all year that SDSU is not very talented at wide receiver right now. I think outside of Wildy, everybody else is a massive question mark. And I don't think Mark of the OC trusts them yet. And he's tagging Alex, of course. But yeah, I think that's part of it. I think Mark's feet might be a little happy because he's getting, you know, at the beginning of the game, the offensive line was rough. You got 2 new starters in there on the O-line. They took a while to settle in. They did settle in the second half, but still, yeah, we're not utilizing the tight ends. I mean, that's concerning as well.
I think that's the big one.
And I don't know if that's by design, if he doesn't trust anybody, if they're not getting open, but it's not the way we've played ball for the last 4 years. And Dallas has said before, I think we underestimate just how good Zach Lujan was at calling a game. We never had a concern. And then you're coming in after Jason Eck, who is leading Idaho to their best season in decades, and is 3-1 with an FBS win, who is an offensive mastermind. And then you got Zach Lujan afterwards. That is really tough to follow. But right now, the pass game, man, I don't know what is going on. The play calling's janky. The Mark is not in rhythm ever. He's never in rhythm. We always do these little bubble screens half the time, it feels like, which I always tease. Chad about being upset about, but it's all the time now. It's excessive, and it's not having the success it used to. So we need to figure something out. I don't know what that is. I'm obviously not an offensive mastermind. Otherwise, I'd be the coach, and I'm not a coach. But you can tell, like, there's something wrong, and it's not a little wrong. It's very wrong right now. 76 yards passing in a game is not just with a quarterback the caliber that Mark was last year. Doesn't just happen because all of a sudden Mark forgot how to play football. Like, Mark didn't forget how to play football over the summer. So I think we've got a whole slew of issues here, offensively passing. The run game obviously is fine. 341 yards. Kirby Voorhees emerging. Amar Johnson, Angel Johnson when he gets back. That is plenty good, but you got to be able to throw the ball to win Natty. And right now, they are not. We cannot convert a 3rd and long right now without running the ball and catching a defense off guard, which they'll catch on to. So that's my concern.
Well, I think one of the big ones that was hit on is the tight ends. I mean, we've heard all coming into the season how loaded and how stacked the tight end room is, but they're all young. I mean, none of them had played game of college football, and you know, you can talk about the guys who are in the pros and everything, but they were always the security blanket you could go to. I mean, you always had the deep, you know, the receiver threats, whether it was the Yankees or Jake Winicky, or, I mean, you know, I think about whenever, God, when was the last time SDSU didn't have just a really good tight end security blanket? They're like the security blanket. You can dump it over the middle to them in short yardage. Some of them, obviously, you had the freakish ones like Goddard, and Kraft to an extent, but Goddard was kind of more of the freak. He was he could be more of a receiver too. But, you know, those are the guys you could kind of dump it into in the shorter yardage. We just haven't really seen that connection yet. I think if you can figure out, I don't know if you
forget that SDSU tight end NFL lineage goes way back.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about Colin Koshart, Steve Hayden, Colin Koshart, Wagner, Chris Wagner went and was on the practice squad for the Seahawks. Colin Koshart played for the Bengals for a while. I mean, this goes back of utilizing tight ends and having them.
I mean, you know, you talk about Iowa being kind of a tight end U for the FBS. That's really what SDSU's had, especially the FCS, but it goes way farther back. You're right, to Division II. And, yeah, I mean, it's just, I don't know if they need to figure out a set rotation. I just don't know if maybe there's too many of them. I don't know, because we know that potential's there. We've seen it. I mean, yeah, and I'm not ready to put any kind of. I think maybe there are. One thing I would say again, non-conference isn't necessarily, as we said all along, it's not something. And I say this for all teams. I say it for USD, NDSU, all of them. You have to take a little bit of this with a grain of salt. I think these last two games, they did know these were opponents that they should beat and probably beat handily. I know on the radio I was listening as I was coming back to the station, some of the post game, or I think I was listening as I was taking my dog for a walk, actually, as they started the third quarter. They mentioned why they hadn't played Chase Mason last week, and they said, well, we wanted to play him at actual quarterback, so we didn't put the packages in last week because we thought we would be up big enough to, that we would be able to play him at regular quarterback. So, I wonder if they're still playing around with some stuff. If they're obviously, I don't think they're really going to try and show very much, except for maybe that Incarnate Word game, because I think they knew that was a game that could be a quality win in terms of playoffs come later in the season. But or the Oklahoma State game too, because that's obviously one they really wanted to get. But yeah, I mean, I think the tight end position, you need that. They need to figure something out there, because I mean, aside from the spectacular stuff, you need that guy who can get over the middle for the tough yards, the big target that he can really feel like is a security blanket. Then I think that opens up everybody else. I know I've seen some criticism. I know Goring has had a couple drops. He's had some great catches too this year. Griffin Wilde, 1 catch for 3. I mean, you got to get. I mean, I know he's probably getting double teamed now because everybody's going to know he's a factor, but you still got to toss it up to him more. I mean, he's so big. You got to just throw him a few jump balls at some point. One other thing I found although again, I think there were a few drops. I can't remember. I was kind of in and out. I didn't see the whole thing, but we're not really doing a whole lot with the running backs out of the backfield in terms of throwing them passes. I think there was a drop or two there. They've thrown a little bit to Maxwell Woods. I think he dropped one. I mean, Amar Johnson was the leading receiver tonight, 3 for 37. I mean, I don't know. It's and like you said, there was the one with Kentrell Prejean called back. That would have been that was unfortunate too, because he's a Louisiana native. The one Louisiana guy would have had a touchdown in front of all his family and friends. That stunk. I kind of want to look back here because I've got the SDSU, and we talked about Lujan, and you're right. I second everything he said, but I do kind of seem to remember too, back in 2022, feels like we got off to a similar start with him right at the beginning. I seem to remember this. I mean, obviously Eck was such a big personality, forgetting what he's doing now, but he was such a personality in the play calling. I don't remember anybody being overly impressed with anything Zach did in the first couple of weeks of 2022. Now there were extenuating circumstances. Obviously, Mark was coming back from the injury. We still didn't, he was still not, it took him about a half season before he was really at full speed. There were other injuries. Kraft ended up missing half the season. They lost him on that first play or two at Iowa. But you still have similar issues here where you've got different personnel. He's obviously not comfortable with his tight ends. They're dealing with injuries along the offensive line, too. We don't know how that's having an effect, certainly. So, I don't know. I mean, but I do kind of wonder, and this is why I say you can't necessarily get too wrapped up in what we're seeing in non-conference, because it's just, if you're going to experiment, screw around, have vanilla play calling, now's the time to do that. Once you get to conference, okay, now you need to start getting a little, now you need to kind of call your A game, because once you get into conference, people know you better, and you need to start, you need to have your A game for conference, and you need to, that's where you need to throw everything out there. You can't be holding back at that point. And what was the, the joke was, I was doing the press conference with Jimmy, and he asked if he somehow thought we were going to go down there. I'm like, I don't think this is in the budget unless I can get the fan boat from the water boy. And I was like, what was the what was the line that Dan Fouts was saying in The Water Boy? He's like, can't hold anything back now for like the eight times in that movie. Like, can't hold anything back. We know, as Musburger kept telling him. So, if they're gonna do vanilla stuff, this was the time to do it.
Here's my counterpoint to
that. It is a little concerning.
Yes, we are beating this to death. Yes. But it is a concern. It's a major concern. You have a Walter Payton award-winning level quarterback who right now, I mean, he just threw for 76 yards. It's a concern. Especially when Jim Nagy's there from the Senior Bowl. And I mean, he was on site. They wanted to be able to show off Mark. And then we couldn't do anything for him. And, and that's a bummer. To me, that's frustrating. And obviously this can get
that's where I wonder if I don't know. I mean, you don't want to put words in the mouth. You wonder if, obviously there's so much hype, Mark's thinking about the drafts. You wonder if he's trying to maybe do too much, if the draft stock stuff's weighing his head. I just don't know. We don't. I think I'm not always a big fan of having that bye week come so early in the season. Might be a good time for it there because they can kind of reset things a little bit. No, I mean, I think it was kind of interesting because I think they kind of mid-game just figured out, okay, we're running the ball well. This has got to be our identity. I mean, we're running because I'd have to look at the breakdown and really get into the weeds, but I think if you looked at the ratio of run to pass at a point in this game, it was very run heavy. Like it was almost, it was super run heavy. So maybe but we'll see. I think they maybe need the 2 weeks to kind of, I'm sure Mark and those receivers, the tight ends, they're going to be working, doing a lot of work over the next 2 weeks. Just build some extra chemistry at this point. Cause I think they probably need that, but I just maybe feel like he's pressing at this point. I mean, maybe it's all these things, the new personnel, the draft stock, all this, and he's just got to he's got to let a little bit of it go. I mean, at this point, things will be okay. I mean, I still feel like he's going to be fine, but it's just he's just got to kind of let some of this go, and he's in a good position too because. Either he goes pro after this year or he still has 1 year of eligibility left. He can still he'll still get that FBS if he's, he could still theoretically go to an FBS school. It'll still be out there if he wants it. It's theory he could still come back here, although I don't think that's going to really be an option. So he's got,
he's said I don't think he won't.
Yeah. I mean, we don't believe that he will, but I mean, the point is he does have options. It's not this isn't necessarily a go pro or bust year. He could still go to the FBS and try it another year if he wants to do that. I think so. I just don't know if maybe and I don't know. I don't want to put words in his mouth. I don't want to throw that. I know that's already, but I know that's getting thrown out there anyway. I know that's, that's inevitably going to be speculation. I just think, probably just a good time, 2 weeks, just to lay low, relatively speaking. And just figure some things out on that end. But
reset.
It's a nice place to be in when you can nitpick a 41-0 victory at the same.
We still
road
won by
victory
41.
Too. Yeah, on the road.
Right. And what Garrett says here, Mark's demeanor and poise in the face of adversity, such as tonight, is something best witnessed in person. Don't forget the character and work ethic ultimately prevails. And I think we all know Mark has that in spades. I mean,
how often has he ever faced? I mean, aside from the injury, which was that's no little aside, by the way. That's a rather big aside. How often has he actually faced that much adversity on the foot? How often has he ever faced a stretch like this, where his play has struggled like this? Maybe I don't know, going back to that opening stretch in 2022 where he was still coming off the injury. I mean, this is no. I mean, he's. Again,
well,
we're not,
Colin, we're not dogging Mark here. We're not trying to dog on Mark. And you're right. He's still got one loss against FCS competition. That's it. He's still Mark Gronowski. But you need to just relax a little bit. because we have to talk about what happened, and 76 yards passing is a concern, and it was rough last game. So we have to talk about it a little bit.
I mean, now
that's
has
half
as
of
many
offense.
he has as many interceptions now as he had all last year, and we're 4 games into the year, and I mean,
if anybody's calling for benching
no,
Mark, then they need to sit down and
nuts.
time out. That absolutely should not happen. Period. I don't care what happens. This isn't. I mean, and I hope we aren't coming off that way. We're not. We really aren't. We
fully. We
believe
both
Mark's
said we think he's going to be fine.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a difference between
gotta figure it out.
Yeah. No. I mean, and of course it's a little. Again, there was just so much hype coming in on the season. He's trying to win a second consecutive Walter Payton. Probably doesn't help either that the guy up north with the big rival
tearing it up.
is right now. I mean, again, I don't watch. I hate to say he is the Peyton favorite right now because I don't know the rest. You know, I don't want to. I would say he is, but I don't watch every other conference that close. I don't, so I'll say on my end, I would say that, that Miller is the favorite right now, but, I'll give deference to if there's somebody else just putting up ungodly numbers. But, so those factors, but again, those factors, it's still so stinking early. And again, as we've always said, you can't judge non-conference. Yeah, I know Powell. I heard about that too. That's the guy I was thinking of. Powell was the guy. I think Shenderick Powell. Zach, you're the one. That's the one I've been hearing about him. So I can't really. But Miller's, Miller's having such a big year that already, and we got is Quentin Hicks on here. Nice, yeah, perfectly fine if he throws for. Welcome aboard,
Absolutely.
Quentin.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and it's just. It does have to be talked about some just because, and I think part of it is just the expectations are so high. He won the Walter Payton Award last year. So the expectations are through the roof. And I want to be very clear right now in my mind, the struggles in the passing game aren't Mark. They're not hard on, they're not all on Mark here. I think, maybe 30-40%, but I think the rest is just play calling and drops and not getting open. I think that's a bigger issue. But Mark is the guy. He's the guy whose name's out there, and that's what gets talked about. I mean, that's what gets talked about nationally. It's going to be talked about nationally. It just is. So Mark is going to be fine.
I mean, like I said, Mark's the guy too. If he wins, I'm sure he's going to be happy with whatever the number is.
Yes.
But I mean, it's.
Well, Mark's probably like, man, we ran exactly. He's going to say exactly what Q said. He's going to say, man, we rushed for like 300 and some yards. Like, who cares?
Well, and again,
341 technically, but
these are like you make your bread in conference play. I mean, the conference games. Yep. I mean, as much as we hype up, the FBS game, whenever that's played, if you're playing an FBS game, or certainly when you have a big FCS non-conference game like last year when they played Montana State, or this year when they had Incarnate Word. I mean, you make your bread in conference. That's where you're gonna either become a seeded team, or you're gonna be playing the first weekend on Thanksgiving. Everybody there's not really any secrets in conference play. Everybody knows you. That's where everything is going to be, decided. So, I remember, last year everybody was freaking out. I remember when the Bisnet were putting up incredible numbers with Cole Payton and Miller, and oh my God, how are you going to stop that? And they kind of belly flopped when they got into conference play. So who knows? I think a lot of this is just kind of and again, some of these teams, like the last 2 weeks, I just don't know. And one thing we got to get into as we move away from the offense is certainly how good the defense has been playing. But at the same time, I'm not sure how good Augustana and SLU really, how good of a barometer they are. I mean, it's just, SLU has some speed guys, but man, I love the pursuit that I saw from the guys on SDSU. I mean, they are just flying to the ball right now. That's impressive to see. So that I think that translates no matter who you're playing. But again, there's going to be there's going to be guys in the Valley. They're going to see Valley teams that are 10 times better than what they've seen the last 2 weeks. So it's going to be a big. So some of this is like, for what we're nitpicking and talking about, okay, same time it's like you have to kind of temper it to say, okay, how do we kind of measure this and not get too hyped or too critical, and just kind of realize, what do we think will carry over, and what's it's the same for anything. That's why non-conference is just it's so hard to get a read on non-conference when you go into conference play. It just is. It's for any team, for every team, and the Valley is just so. This is as unpredictable, I think, as I've seen the Valley in years, because don't really. We think we know who's good, but they all have question marks. I think we still have an idea of who's going to go far, but they all have some things you're kind of wondering about as you're going into Valley play. It's going to be interesting.
Yeah, and even if you do, schedule a really tough, what seems to be a really tough out of conference, they're all scheduled years in the future. And say they do come in, like Montana State came in, number 2 last year. And that, don't get me wrong, it was still a huge win, but they didn't end at number 2. They ended, you don't know what losses teams are going to make, how they're going to look, what's going to happen. You can have a pretty good feeling of who, I think this might be a playoff team, this might not, but you don't know until the season starts to take shape, and that's the same, that's the same thing with the offense. You don't know what it's going to look like till the season takes shape. And like you said, I remember 2022, all the talk was, where's the explosive plays? Where's the explosive plays? The offense is doing fine, but where's the plays? And all of a sudden, boom, it went nuts. So I think it is important to keep in mind, Mark threw for a shitload of yards against Incarnate Word. It's not like he hasn't had great games this week. Oh, I'll be right back. You take the reins.
Little one needs some attention. Yeah, no, I think if there's one game for SDSU where I think you can maybe point to and say that maybe it's a good indicator of what could be coming up, it's definitely Incarnate Word, because I think they played that one a little more like a conference game just because it's a 12th ranked team. I know obviously they got beat the following week and they're still, but that's a game I think they knew that certainly you didn't want to lose 2 in a row, but it's a game that, if you lose it, then suddenly you're maybe in a little trouble come playoff time. It's a game that could potentially have had some seeding effects down the road. So it was definitely a game that, all right, we got a guest here. Nice. We got a special guest. I should do this more I can't really do this from home. Mine's a little older now, so if he would be up, he'd be a little more raucous. But we have got a guest on this. Oh, that's awesome. But no, anyways, yeah, I think the defense, I believe, is built really well. The defense was still, they lost some key pieces, including Mr. Quentin Hicks, who's gone, but that line rotates through so many guys who throughout the year. Every year they rotate through so many guys. They just it's like a hockey team almost practically. It's like a line change. Everybody gets experience year in, year out. You don't have like that. I mean, the closest example I can think of was when they lost Sanders and Winkleman, who were as close, I think, as you could get to like all conference stars, especially Sanders. And they just, it took maybe a week or two into the next year. And I know once again, everybody was freaking out at the start. Oh, they're not getting enough sacks. Same thing we heard this season. And, sure enough, it all got going by the end of the year. And tonight they were pretty good. I know Southeastern style kind of leaned toward that. And they actually kind of made a bit of a weird choice, I think, with their starter tonight. The Stewart kid, I don't think he was necessarily, I don't know if that was an injury-based thing or what, but he was more of a runner, and I don't know if it didn't. I don't think that worked the way the Coach Scelfo really wanted. But yeah, you had tonight, Jax ended up with, my goodness, I think 4 sacks. So, yeah, Kobe guy I really continue to like is Kobe Claiborne. I love that guy. That dude, I saw him in camp, and I'm like, he's about the size of Sanders. Just not a big dude, but incredible motor. He had a sack tonight. I mean, the defense.
You remember when everybody was asking, "Where's the sacks?" They make you jump.
Okay. Yeah, they always start slow, and they come around. I'm like, come on, it doesn't. They'll get the sacks when they matter the most. That tends to be the thing. So, yeah, I'm not worried about that. And they had a lot of. I'll look up the thing here. They had a lot of tackles it wasn't just sacks. They had a lot of tackles for a loss. Now, again, this was a Southland team. This was not a particularly good Southland team. The only one they have been in the past. Actually, 2 years ago, they beat Eck in the playoffs and got to the second round, but they only won 3 games last year. So they're obviously in a bit of a downswing. If there's one thing I think Coyote and Jackrabbit fans can agree on, it's that Eastern Washington must be really bad because this team, SLU, beat Eastern last week 28-24. SDSU hangs 41 on them in a shutout. And, of course, Drake went to Eastern and beat Eastern Washington and just got pulverized today by USD, about the same score. So apparently Eastern Washington is a dumpster fire beyond.
To be fair, we were an awful matchup for Southeastern Louisiana.
Yeah,
I mean, that wants to run the ball and just run it nonstop.
Well, and obviously, it's not necessarily fair to say I can't compete with this visual, man. Come on. It's not necessarily fair to compare a non-conference game against a bottom tier, at best mid-tier right now, Big Sky team against top 10 teams. But, Eastern, it just continues to blow my mind as I have it in my little thing down here, as I can try and point.
Right.
I can't believe Eastern's gotten this bad. It's just, I can't believe they beat Monmouth. Well, and yeah, I guess when did Eastern beat Monmouth? Because Eastern got beat today by Nevada. So they beat Monmouth earlier in the year.
Yeah, week 1 maybe.
Well, I guess anything can happen. I must have missed that. Well, who knows? I mean,
week 1, 42-27.
Yeah, and then of course Monmouth goes out and 42-27, and really wasn't even that close because Monmouth scored 13 in the fourth quarter, so it was actually worse. And then, sure enough, Monmouth goes out today and beats Florida International. But I don't know. Beating some of the directional Florida, beating FIU is not. I don't know. I mean, it's an FBS scalp, but there's some times where some of those scalps are. Some of those teams are kind of like, I swear sometimes it's not that much farther from being an FCS. When some of these schools at those group of 5 levels get that far down, the difference is not that high, different from being an FCS school. But yeah, I mean, you never know. I mean, I guess, yeah, that's shocking. Yeah, it was 42-14 Eastern in that game. And then, of course, the next week they lose to Drake. So it just feels like it's a tailspin. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I mean, I don't know. I still feel like, I know my wife got really upset with whoever picked, and it wasn't Haley who picked against the Jacks this week, was it?
No, it was Gary.
It was the other guy
who's on with Craig Haley.
Yeah, I know, and I know it wasn't Herder, but yeah, I agree with Kinkle. It's CUSA basically is an FCS conference. A lot of those teams were just in the FCS. So, but yeah, my wife was pretty ticked off with that guy who picked against, saying they're right for an upset. I mean, I'm like, I didn't necessarily. I thought it was a little bit of a stretch. I'm like, yeah, I think a lot would have to go wrong for them to lose down there, but it was just kind of a, yeah. I mean, no, I think, but I think what happened with it. I think what happened with NDSU last week was a little eye-opening for people nationally. Although, to be fair, East Tennessee came back today and had a pretty good game. So, it's fully possible that East Tennessee is is going to have is going to be a factor and be a playoff team at this point. We'll see. But I think watching NDSU go down to East Tennessee and nearly should have lost. They got some very fortunate things happen to win that game. I know they lost, but even West Carolina going to Montana. You need to. Is the mic on? Is she saying anything?
Yeah. She sees a red light on the mic, and that's what she's.
Just waiting for her to say something, babble a little bit.
Well, not yet. She's still pretty sleepy.
Okay. So I remember if it were my dude back in the day, he would have been babbling all over this thing. Yeah. Yeah, I know. And Zach, I mean, to get to Zach's point, like I said, I got to I'm pulling up that thing now. But yeah, East Tennessee goes on the road. And I know Elon was 1-2, but I was very curious to see how East Tennessee would respond after losing that game the way they did. You wondered if did they pour everything into beating NDSU, and were they going to come out and just be completely deflated, or were they going to be able to pick themselves back up? And I think they certainly did. Did something happen in that game? I'm not aware. Did Linden?
Oh, they just destroyed them.
I'm not too surprised by it. Well, I mean, I guess it is kind of up. And I mean, we saw Sioux Falls go into. I mean, I know what Northern Iowa. Oh, we should actually. I got to check in on that because obviously
they're getting paddled.
We've got.
I saw.
Yeah, I'm sure they are. It's 22-7 in the second quarter is not terrible.
64
Northern Iowa's in Northern Iowa.
No, St. Thomas more in Lindenwood.
Okay. Oh yeah, no, I was because of course we do have a Valley game in progress. Northern Iowa is at Hawaii right now. Of course, that game's on the islands, so they're in the second quarter. Although my ESPN game tracker is terrible, it's always way behind, at least for me. But I mean, yeah, we saw St. Thomas get handled by Sioux Falls in their opener, and Sioux Falls really could have won that game by a lot more. And then, of course, the next week, St. Thomas was leading Sioux Falls, or was leading Northern Iowa most of the way. And so I don't really know what St. Thomas is. I guess I'm not shocked that they would go out on the road and get killed like that. Maybe Linden would.
Well,
I don't know.
Northern Iowa hasn't done anything to show they're good yet in any form or fashion.
I mean, they played two Pioneer League teams. I think it was Valpo was their first.
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2-1. They got two Pioneer League wins. I mean,
and they didn't dunk them away right away either. It was, if I remember right. Well, no, it was 28-7 in the first half, and then it was 35-7 at the end. But
yeah, I mean, but Valpo's typically one of the worst. They're typically one of the worst FCS teams. Pioneer League. I mean, they nearly lost to Southwest Minnesota State last year at home. I mean, it was a 1-point game. So I mean, they typically never win a game a lot of times. So I don't know. I mean, I know St. Thomas has a good coach and they got a good pedigree, but they seem to be really down this year. But that's still a game. I know because obviously South Dakota State will be off next week. That's still a dangerous game. That Unidome is always a weird place. Even you go back 2 years ago when the Jacks won their first title, they escaped on a last-second field goal, and they kind of got a little bit of a lucky break on a leaping penalty after they had missed what looked like a chip shot field goal. There was a leaping penalty. We know about that. And actually, Dakota State's 4-0. The Trojans up in Madison are 4-0 now. So nice little story there. But no, don't forget it was a few years ago that I remember Hunter Dustman, I think, missed a chip shot, but they called a leaping penalty on Northern Iowa. And he gets a redo closer and makes it. And if they miss that, then they would have split the if they miss that, they go to overtime. Who knows what happens? If they had lost that game, they don't get the number 1 seed. They would have split the conference title, I think, with NDSU. They would have had the higher seed because they'd beaten the Bison head to head. But I know they won. I'm just saying weird crap happens in that dome. That was not a good UNI team, and they still needed a it still came down to a field goal in a game where I think you and I maybe had a chance to make the playoffs. They were like a 6-7, and they've progressively gotten worse. I mean, we know Farley's kind of constantly complaining now about, the budget, and these are true things, actually. He's kind of constantly going on about how bad things are there, and he's not wrong, but at the same time, I kind of also wonder if it's time for a new voice there to lead that program. But it's the only time I think I've ever really seen him blow them out there in the Dome was 2016 when they clinched their first Valley title. I remember that was the game where one of the linemen for SDSU we had a lineman touchdown in that game.
Yes, that was the one.
That was the night I got married, actually. Title. I think that was my wedding night, actually.
God, I can't believe I can't remember the name either. Who it was?
I should. I'm going to look it up now, but he had a touchdown that blew that game open. I remember.
Outside of last year, UNI games have just been tight for whatever reason. They just have been. The Jacks have won more than they've lost. Absolutely. Yeah, it's Kellen Solik. Yep. Thank you, Kellen.
Yep. Friday Yankton.
So, yeah, it's the Skeletor magic from Coach Farley that comes out. But UNI Dome's.
Well, I mean, how many hobo days have they ruined?
Yeah. Oh God, that until last year, the Jacks.
Until last year, yeah.
Into that in a big way, which is good. So.
Yeah. So that's 2 weeks off, and I think they have a bye. I have to double check here. I think they have a bye too. So, I mean, I don't know. They're in a weird spot. And by the way, I did want to mention we do have like I said, I think I mentioned this once, the highlights for SDSU and USDR online. So I need to link my YouTube account here at some point and share them. But
to be fair about the UNI Dome, there was a stretch where only the road team won for a while.
That's true.
So, and the Jacks have won there quite a few times in a row now at this point. So that is a good thing. I mean,
I think there was a stretch there where the only time the home team won was the playoff game in 2017, which had come after they had lost a disastrous Hobo Day game that year, and then they came back and they hammered UNI in the playoffs in the second round, and then that was the first year they reached the semifinals for the first time ever. So we'll see. I mean, UNI they don't have I gotta pull up their stats, but again, their stats are kind of a little hard to read their stats right now because they've basically played 2 Pioneer League teams, and they're on their second FBS team. So
yeah, what do you do with that?
What do you read out of that? Not much, but they don't have who was I'm already blanking on they had the great quarterback last year, although he kind of, what was his name? Theo Day.
Yep, Theo Day just
he kind of stunk last year. I mean, he was great the previous year, but then he really he cratered last year. So I think the one thing that's kind of come to the forefront is what's their identity anymore? I mean, they used to be I remember, you think back to when they had David Johnson, and we had some of those David Johnson, Zach Zenner years back and forth. I think I used to remember them being a power run team, and I don't really know what their identity is anymore. That's kind of what kind of stands out to me right now.
They run a lot is what it looks like to me. But
yeah, I mean, it looks like maybe they're getting back to that.
Matchup against this defense, man. This defense is stone cold against the run. They are so good against the run. I mean, outside of facing Ollie Gordon,
and they weren't really that bad against him. He had to work to get to 100 yards.
They didn't have a bad game at all in that. They had a great game, and they allowed 94 rushing yards in this game. So that's the most they've given up outside of that game. But they certainly haven't given up 100 yards to a single running back.
I mean, right now, and obviously their game's still in progress with it's going to be going late. So if you really want to watch it, I'm not sure where it's being streamed right now. I think probably on ESPN Plus or something. But yeah, Ty Edwards has 347 yards for him. They've got a couple of backs. Quarterback is Aiden Dunn, who I don't really remember. He's a junior. I think he looks like he's not a transfer, so it looks like he's been there. Actually, he made his collegiate debut at Western Illinois. So he's a Western Illinois transfer. Interesting. That's kind of weird. That's another thing, too. They've been really relying on transfer quarterbacks the last few years. So I don't know. They've been slipping. I mean, you think about where they were when South Dakota State and North Dakota State went into the Valley. They were a premier program, and it just kind of gradually slipped. They were the one that you had to knock off if you were going to be get to the level. And man, and a lot of it's budget. I mean, they get nothing from the state of Iowa. I mean, and they've always been in that issue. I mean, from an attention standpoint, they're not that far from Iowa City. So, they're never getting, I mean, it's just, if you're a Panther fan, a true Panther fan, it's a hard life because you don't get that much attention anyway. I mean, that's why most of their games start at 4:00 because they're trying to avoid starting at the same exact time as the Iowa games. But, yeah, I mean, it's Farley. He had some really kind of out there comments last year about how bad things had gotten, especially compared to what the Dakota schools budget is. And
I've heard some wild stuff about their budgets after their AD left. Like they don't know where money went and all sorts of craziness.
Yeah, and they were very happy to say goodbye to him and watch him go down to Nebraska. So
yeah,
very seldom do you see a guy. And I know there were some rumors that maybe they would go target Justin Sell, and I was like, I don't know if Justin wants that job. So but yeah, I think that'll wrap it up for SDSU. I think we kind of hit basically every topic there. The only other thing I thought maybe is that I'm still kind of curious to see what they're going to do with Maxwell Woods because every time I see the guy in short bursts, I don't know if they're going to keep they got, I think, 2 more games maybe, or did they use them?
I mean, it'll be best for him and SDSU if you redshirt him. He just needs about 15 pounds of muscle. I mean, he's a freak. Absolutely, but if you get Angel back, you've got the running back depth. You've got him.
The thing, though, that could be the problem because if it's a hamstring, by the way, Ron, we are in the Pac-12 already, so but if it is a hamstring, that could be a lingering thing. I don't know. That's just going to be man. That kid is, and one thing that I did bring up to somebody is, excuse me, because I get into a coughing fit here. My lingering whooping cough. Thank you, Portland State. Yeah. The one thing I do mention, and again, I don't do this to be the alarmist guy, and I don't like I know we hear it all the time from the folks up in Fargo, but in the transfer portal era, I don't think you can necessarily plan to have a guy 4 years. I'm like, if you can, you hope to have the guy 4 years. But, if you feel like you need to use them now, use them. I mean, I just,
it's definitely
I realize in the past that's kind of what you want to do, but you do kind of have to play for the now a little bit more, I think, in the era we're in. Especially, just in the era we're in, I think, if you feel like it's going to help you win now, and if you feel like this kid can help you win another national title now, even if you don't, somebody was like arguing, is it worth it for Griffin Wilde? Well, he helped them win 2 games. I mean, he had his 2 touchdown catches against Southern Illinois and Montana State were the difference in the 2 closest games they had. And certainly, now that's a different example. He got a lot more playing time last year, but that certainly got him ready. But they do have a little more depth at running back to where I think they could certainly redshirt him. But man, every time, just in the short bursts you see of the guy, you certainly see why they were very excited to get him.
Yeah, absolutely. He's that kid's going to be a factor in the future for SDSU, one way or the other. The kid's going to be a factor. He is a stud. He's going to be fun.
Well, I think looking at the rest of the Valley, speaking of whooping cough, South Dakota came back from their unscheduled bye. Poor young, we kind of expected that today, though. They were playing. There's a little cough. Was that a cough?
Sneeze.
Just wanted to hear some rumors. Yeah, we kind of expected that from Young. Oh, God, yeah. Didn't necessarily expect the 70 burger, but, you know.
I thought they'd maybe come out inspired, and yep, I was wrong.
Yeah, well, might be a setback here. But, I mean, still, I don't know. That's still a team that they lost. I mean, they lost so much last year in the portal. It's just, but that's still a game. Well, I mean, I wouldn't fear them too much coming up. Like if SDSU had to go to Youngstown, that'd still be a game that's always. It feels like any game in the Valley is a trap unless you're going to maybe Indiana or Murray. I don't know if is there a Murray guy on here?
Yeah, where's Mike?
Sorry, man. I don't feel like it's that much of a trap yet. Could be wrong. Maybe USD will slip up down there, but no. I was gonna say, yeah, USD, and I went to that game and shot it, and not a whole lot to say. I mean, like I said, I know Drake won, so they took him seriously, but it did look like a team that was very eager to get back on the field after an unplanned bye week, and right from the jump, opening kickoff. Steph Logan's kid takes it back 99 yards. Really ran all over him. I mean, there again, same thing. Same logic I use for every team. You got to take it all with a grain of salt. It's especially in some of those games. But yeah, I mean, they ran the ball pretty well. Still feel like something's kind of missing with their offense. It just doesn't feel like, even though Bauman's numbers look good, it still doesn't feel like their passing game is clicking yet. I can't quite put my finger on why. They had a lot of penalties today. I think that was maybe the one drawback. Defensively, I think they're pretty good. But I know a lot of people have said that maybe the one thing that could screw them with that Portland State thing is, obviously playoffs. Certainly you lose a game. I mean, you lose in terms of, and they appealed to the NCAA. That will not be turned into a forfeit, which.
Yeah. Well, and let's be honest, I don't know how much the forfeit would help anyways, because while you don't want to punish USD for it, aren't you effectively punishing another team if you go, well, it's a win and they would have won by this much off a hypothetical, and I think it's going to be a tough spot, and it's not fair, but
I also wonder if there's some feeling that Portland State wasn't entirely honest in what was going on, and I don't know. It just feels like there was some. We'll see. I mean, I don't want to put words in their mouths. There seems to be a lot of acrimony between the parties.
Their AD is furious,
and I think the one thing I'm more concerned about, more so than the seedings or what. I think they could have used that one game to just kind of get some of their rhythms and timings down a little bit better. Because it just, like I said, the Northern game, their offense didn't look. I don't know, just something's missing a little bit with the. And we'll see. I mean, again, holding some stuff back. I think the one thing I did note from them is that they're trying to get Steph Logan's kid more, Keandre Jones Logan, the name, trying to get him more involved. They did definitely. Saw him doing some of the stuff, you see the stuff that Tyreek Hill does where they'll throw him a little flip pass. Started doing that with him more. He's getting the ball a lot more on offense. So, they're actively trying to get him involved more. They started involving some more wide. They've got a lot. They really do have a lot of good receivers. That's the other, and maybe there's an issue there. I mean, we talk about it with SDSU's tight ends where they got all these guys, but they aren't getting them involved. Maybe you're having trouble finding a rotation. I mean, they still haven't really gotten J.J. Galbraith involved very much yet. So, I don't know. It's like it feels like something is missing from their offense to where they should be more explosive. And we were saying that all last year. Maybe it all clicks together next week. Like Ron's saying, like because that Southern Illinois game on paper, and I know Southern lost tonight to SEMO. Southeast Missouri, and like we said, like you were telling me before we came in today, and Southern's quarterback got hurt last week. He's out. We don't think he's going to be back next week. But even still, I mean, as of right now, that's number 6 versus number 7. I would assume Southern's going to drop somewhat. Ooh. Here's the real game we're watching right now is trying to corral your time. But that becomes that's a very big game now for both teams because, again, for USD, you kind of, right now they only have one Division I win, unfortunately, because they lost that Portland State game. Their only Division I win is Drake, and that's not going to go very far, even though Drake has a win over Eastern Washington. Now Southern Illinois, you're talking, if they lose next week, they're at 3 losses. And it's a 12-game season, obviously. So, maybe a 5-loss team gets a little more leeway in a 12-game season. But if Southern Illinois is at 3 losses, then they're really up against it for the rest of the season. So, next week, that's got to be the game of the week in the Valley. SIU at USD. That has a lot. Like, it's going to be this way it always is in the Valley. Every week feels like a playoff game, but I think that's going to tell a lot. I think USD really need to have a good offensive performance next week because it just feels like I said, it feels like something has been missing, and we'll start to figure out, what's what next week. I think
they should win that game. If they don't, then there's trouble.
Yeah, that's going to be a problem. The rest of their, they will have a little bit of a softer.
What?
Again, I like their run game. Travis Tice runs well. Charles Pierre Jr. runs well. But if they can't get that pass game going, then people are going to start stacking the box. And if they win Southern Illinois next week, then they go to Murray, who somehow is receiving votes. I don't know how they're getting votes, but maybe that's just how bad the rest of the FCS is. Places.
That's how bad it's a voters thing.
No idea how that's happening.
You and I still getting votes.
Yeah, they were ranked 19th, weren't they?
Yeah, not just getting votes; they're ranked. So,
well, yeah, but point is, if USD wins that, then they go to Murray State and they have UNI and Youngstown at home before the game at SDSU. So, you win that, you win next week. Pretty good chance you're on a pretty good chance you are 6-1 when you pull into Brookings for the Jackrabbit game. Obviously that could set, that could be for everything at that point. And, who knows, maybe I've heard, there's been some rumors of potentially, no rumors yet. I've heard some people saying, well, maybe game day would go to Fargo for SCSU, NDSU. Maybe game day would think about Brookings for USD, SDSU. Obviously the fact that both of the games are on ESPN, I think helps the causes of game day ending up at either one. It just depends on what's going on as well in the FBS. But
yes,
there was legitimate chance that it could have gone to Vermilion a year ago. It wasn't fake news that they were reserving hotel rooms down in Sioux City for the possibility of that. It's just going to depend, obviously, like I said, what happens, what's the FBS games, what do SDSU and NDSU and USD all do from here on out. I think, maybe they are done with the FCS. We don't know. It just depends. Like I said, it would have helped certainly if, let's just say if SDSU and NDSU and USD had all won their FBS games, you would have really seen a pretty good shot of it happening. But you never know. They do like to go to one off the beaten path place. It could well be an FBS game. It could well be a group of 5 team. You never know.
Yep.
But I know just as we wrap it up here, rest of the Valley today, North Dakota State. It's kind of weird. We're in a flipped around world. I feel like we're in the upside down here a little bit because the Bison defense has more questions as we come into the Valley than the offense. It's kind of a weird universe because that game, they beat Towson today, 41-24. And that game got close in the fourth quarter. It got down to 7 points. And, it looked like it was their Hall of Fame day. They had Craig Bowl and everybody back in town. They ended up giving up 366 yards. Towson put up 205 rushing on them. I don't know that they were in danger of losing. I mean, I don't know if they were in danger of losing it, but
they let off the gas and then put the pedal back down when they started coming back.
Right. I think that's probably fair, but still, it's 2 weeks in a row that defensively they look kind of suspect against the run. I mean, defensively, I think Wisniewski being out is really hurting them. I mean, he was kind of the captain of the defense. There we go. All right, now there we go.
What? You got to be part of the show.
From her. There's the star of the show. There we
go.
Well,
I was told by Deb that I need to get her own screen, so hopefully a bunch of screen time for her tonight will make her not too mad at me after the start of the show.
I do agree, Adam. We need another fat head. Even if they have to go up to Fargo, I want like get a couple. If it ends up in Fargo, you need to take over and put like multiple fat heads up there. I'm just kidding. It needs to be back in Brookings. We need to have it in Brookings and have it all South Dakota. I don't want to have any more North Dakota game days. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. Again, Cam Miller is still playing very well. 17-19, 219. Maybe they have a running back now. This Brown went for 126 and 3 touchdowns.
Yep.
Again, I'm not sure Towson is a great barometer either. But I think they do have some defensive issues there. I mean, they're but again, we don't know. We'll find out next week. They play at Illinois State, who, again, similar to our talk about how Northern Iowa probably should not be ranked. Yeah, I mean, that could bode well for SDSU. We know the Jacks have run well. And you think so much about where the Jacks used to struggle against the Bison. They could never run the football in the dynasty years. Like, how many times did Zach Zenner, I think the first year I was out here in 2013, that game they had at Coughlin, where I think he ran for -3 yards in that game where they were in the game the whole way. They were in that game the whole way, and they couldn't do anything.
Is that so funny?
And now they've just, you look over this win streak, they've run all over them. I mean, so, yeah, I mean, look, they play at Illinois State next week. Illinois State handled Eastern Illinois today. Now Brock Spack and company did lose their star running back for the year.
Yeah.
So, but Illinois State's given them some tough games the last couple of years. Game is in Normal. And we just saw,
I think they're too beat up to give them a real run.
I think so too. We'll see. I mean, it's conference. You'd think they would be locked in for that. But, after what happened at East Tennessee, I mean, you have to at least be a little – we'll see. Like I said, if they had that running back, I think you would put them on upset alert. But without that running back, I don't know how they go in there. But, at the same time, I didn't think they had a prayer of – East Tennessee had a prayer. So we'll see. But I think schedule, sets up – because then they get UND after that. And then UND today, I mean, goodness. They came back and beat their Pioneer team. They beat the other USD, if you will, 41-24. But they were down at half in that game. And, they did throw the ball a little bit in the second half, but I don't know. I still have a tough time buying this team because their numbers are a little deceptive. Their quarterback, Romfo, goes 5 of 13 for $159, 2 touchdowns and 2 picks, but they were down. Like I said, they got down 14-3. They're playing a non-scholarship team. They were going to come back and win that game. How are you going to – if you get down in the Fargo Dome or you get down to the Jackrabbits and all you can do is run the football and you have no pass game, and you're chasing points. I mean, I know they seem to have a good defense and they're physical, but I just don't know if how far that's going to fly. Maybe they can get an at-large bid because there's probably enough teams in the Valley you can beat, but I just don't know that I buy them as an actual top 10 team right now. I think they're probably mid-level because I just don't know. I don't know. they remind me of an old. I guess they're more of an old school team. Like if they were playing outdoor at Memorial Stadium and it were 20 below in December, this works perfectly. But I just don't know how they're gonna maintain this when they run into the upper half of the league. So
yeah, I don't know. We'll see how. I want to see him win on the road. I've been saying that for a while. I got to see him win on the road first.
And they're gonna have to go to their first road game, I believe, is let's see, next week. They're off. They're home next week from Murray, so they should win that. But then their first road games at NDSU. I think the Bison will be a little more tuned up for that after what happened a year ago.
Yep.
Like I said, we'll start to learn everything. We'll start to learn here pretty quick because conference play
are going to hurt yourself.
Starts next week. I guess any other notable outcomes this week before we wrap up? Bobcats had 7 different guys. They were playing Mercyhurst. I mean, I'm not too impressed by that one. That was a last-second addition to their schedule because Stephen, credit to former Jackrabbit administrator Leon Costello for finding a last-minute addition because Stephen F. Austin dropped them from their schedule. He got Mercyhurst, who just came up to the FCS at the very last minute into their schedule, but that was not going to be a good game, and that was not a good game. So, I guess maybe the other notable one of the other notable games I know was Montana got down pretty big early to West Carolina. But you take your foot off the gas at Washington Grizzly, and you're bound to – it's not going to go well, and Montana ends up coming back to win that game.
We're talking now.
I'd rather hear her half the time. She sounds better than me.
She sounds better than me.
We'll wrap it up here pretty quick. Montana come back to win 46-35 over West Carolina, who tough luck 1-3. They've got that. Maybe they might have found their quarterback, Montana. They got that Keelia Yacht kid ran for 4 touchdowns, but we'll see. We'll see where the Grizz go from here. Better to win. SoCon's maybe a little bit better this year. I don't know. They came very close to 2. What would have been 2 defining wins, certainly with if they'd have beaten North Dakota State, but unfortunately that didn't happen for them. Incarnate Word got a nice win over Northern Arizona. Idaho fighting Jason X escaped, got a 3-point win at Abilene Christian in a game that tightened up late. They gave up 13 points in the fourth quarter and hung on to win by 3. As somebody mentioned, Portland State actually did come back from their whooping cough. Shocker that they wanted to get the paycheck.
It's a miracle.
Miracle, yeah. Especially when whatever Boise State was paying them to play that game. And they were actually in that game for about a quarter. They were tied at 7 after a quarter and then got away from them 56-14. So I don't think Boise's going to win a game. Or Boise's going to win a few games. Portland will probably not be winning a game this year. So, they can take care of themselves and get vaccinated against whooping cough. That would be my recommendation. But I think that'll do it for the show tonight. We'll be taking next week off. You're heading out of town. Obviously, the Jacks are off. Certainly, I will still be around on Twitter. I've still got to work. Shocker. So if any of you all want to just keep in touch with me, I'll be around. Just tweet at me. I'll probably be at that USD game against Southern Illinois, and certainly we'll be back in 2 weeks for the post-game show when the Jacks head to Northern Iowa, probably about the same time. Hopefully we'll have a guest there too. I don't know. I don't mind that. She's probably a little past her bedtime though. I can't really.
This is the first time she's been up for an extended period of time at night, and since she was born, it's the lights and everything around. Otherwise, she usually goes right back to sleep. So,
yeah, I was gonna say obviously I would go. I don't really have a great setup at home, but I don't want to wake my 4-year-old up. Otherwise, he would be chatting up a storm right now. He'd be entertaining. Some of it I would not want to have aired on this channel. Oh, I wonder what are her thoughts on the play of Mark Gronowski and the play calling.
Well, she loves Mark, so it's A+, and she has full.
She did kind of have a yawn there though when I asked about the play calling.
Yeah.
Sorry, Ryan Olson, if you're watching. They're probably still in flight, actually.
Yeah, I don't think they care about me. Well, I hope they don't care about what I have to say.
You never know, man. They always say they tune out the media and all this stuff, but actually, I remember. I think I told you this last year, didn't I? I ran into Stig at one of the games. He said, "I hear you're doing a post-game show, and people love it. It's really
funny."
So somehow it got to Stig that we're doing this, and I mean, granted, Stig's retired now.
We've had him on the A team before. We've had Stig on, so that was awesome. It was post Natty, and he had to run and find a charger for his phone mid interview, and it was phenomenal. It was the most Stig interview ever, and it was incredible.
Oh yeah, God, Stig is miss him. Well, he's still there, but miss him as miss the part of him. Just miss having guys like that as a head coach. There's just not too many of them, too many of them left anymore in college football. But again, thanks for joining us, all you as you like to say, Brendan, degenerates.
Yep.
Thank you,
all the degenerates.
Thank your daughter for joining us, even though she probably shouldn't be up at this time. No child should be, but she'll hopefully sleep most of the day tomorrow, as they should.
Right.
Thanks to Kirby Voorhees. If we could give out a beer award or a player of the night award, you would get it. And hey, everybody, have a good 2 weeks and enjoy it, because now the fun stuff will start here next week as we get into Valley play.
Take it easy, folks.